This is a presentation on the factors affecting the price elasticity of demand. Some goods are, generally speaking, more inelastic than others. They have a demand curve which is much steeper. For example, like this one. Here, the price can change a lot and quantity does not change very much at all. So this is what we mean by an inelastic demand curve. In contrast, this demand curve is much more elastic. It is much shallower. A small change in price will cause a large change in quantity. So, some goods are quite inelastic in their demand, others are much more elastic. And we're going to look at what factors determine whether a good is relatively inelastic or relatively elastic with respect to changes in price. So let's consider the first and most important factor, that is, how many substitutes there are of a product. If we consider oil as a source of energy, there are very few substitutes to oil, and therefore the demand curve of oil is very price inelastic. On the other hand, economics textbooks have many substitutes. There are many authors writing economic textbooks, and so the demand curve for any particular economics textbook may be expected to be much more elastic. So the number of substitutes is an important factor in deciding the price elasticity of demand for a product. A second important factor is the level of branding or advertising that goes behind a product. If we compare Coca-Cola with other cola drinks which are sold in supermarkets, we would expect the demand curve of Coca-Cola to be much more inelastic than that of other cola drinks. And the reason is the level of advertising and branding that goes behind Coca-Cola compared to other cola drinks. This makes customers loyal to Coca-Cola and means that even if the price of Coca-Cola goes up, they will continue to buy roughly the same quantity of this drink compared to other cola drinks which have less advertising behind them and command less brand loyalty. Finally, another factor that we're going to consider in this presentation which affects the price elasticity of demand is time. Something like petrol, which we use as a source of energy to run our cars, is very inelastic in the short run because cars still use petrol as their source of energy and there are very few alternatives available. But if the price of petrol increases and stays high for a long time, as we are already seeing, other sources of energy for cars will be developed as petrol becomes very expensive. For example, electric cars. And so over time, the demand curve of petrol will go from being inelastic to being much more elastic. So time is a factor that determines the price elasticity of demand, as well as the others we have considered, such as branding and advertising, and the number of substitutes available for a product.